Hi there, and welcome to our second Q&A. Now that we are really close to our second alpha, we have a lot of questions. Again, I have my phone here to answer them, but before that, I am Alex, the sound designer here at Dream Primer, and I'm alongside Adrian, who is our game director. Okay, so as I said, we have a lot of questions, so let's dig in. Well, let's start with this one. So, Right Rick asks a lot of questions actually, but the first one is that will the level cap be raised for the second alpha to give access to more skill points and more varied builds?
Yeah, especially that now you can combine archetypes. Actually, we raised the level cap to 35. It's enough for now from our initial playtesting. We might raise it to 40 if we feel that we don't award enough talent points. So you'll be able to experiment with various builds. But from our experiments, 35, it might be the right spot.
It's enough for the dual
Yeah.
class system.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Next up, will the servers phasing be done in such a way that there will be enough room to breathe and ample people around?
Yeah. So the game server load balancing has some priorities. Basically, we need to achieve two goals that are a bit antagonistic. We need to provide a good experience for the players, so good performance. We cannot overcrowd the server. So basically, we cannot put, let's say, 100, 200 players on the same server. And at the same time, we need to keep the server cost under control. So we need to put enough people on the server to be under control. While we don't have support for this alpha, what we plan to do in the future is in social hubs to have enough players. So we have servers that are hosting, let's say, towns or common areas where the people gather. And for those servers will basically host more players in them. But for this alpha, and actually this is a goal of the alpha, to determine how many players do you keep on a game server to have the best experience in terms of players being able to find other players in the world to collaborate and solve various challenges together, and not be overcrowded in such a way that you have to wait to complete a quest, let's say. Yep. And for PK, I mean that means player killing.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I treat it as player collaboration.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's the goal, to have enough players so you'll meet players during your playthrough. It happened for the alphas. In the previous alpha, you would meet players in several areas.
Yeah, I forgot to mention PK and Adrian also got a read through to the question, so nice catch. And about the social hubs, yeah, I think I saw that a lot in a lot of action RPGs, right? When they say that they have multiplayer capabilities, and you see a lot of people running around.
Yeah, and
cities.
it's good to the games looks more lively because you are able to host more players on the same game server. And usually in hubs, you don't cast abilities, you don't fight other monsters. Basically, they are separated. You only run the players, so you can afford cost efficiently to host a lot more players in social hubs, and that gives you see a lot more players.
Yeah,
and when you
really
go
cool.
outside, you get phased to another server, and it's less crowded, but it's not empty. You meet other players.
Very cool. Okay, and I think this is the last question from Right Trick. Will the skill trees have the same lockout as they did in Alpha 1? For an example, as an example, being able to buff arc lighting with only one elemental tree.
Yeah, for this alpha, you'll basically have access to both skill trees from the primary hero archetype and the secondary hero archetype. And you'll have access, we didn't put any restrictions in place. I think there's another question that, but anyway, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will get to that one.
And yeah, they'll have the same layout. You basically have 3 talent cards, and you are free to buff your skills. And we'll still have exclusive talents. So basically, once you start buffing an ability, you have to make a choice to pick a specialization for that ability. Those will still be exclusive.
If people remember, we have that radial system for the talent trees.
That will be in place, but we won't put any other restrictions, because what we want in this alpha is that players have the freedom to experiment with various builds.
So you can say now is the perfect time to break the game and make that insane build.
That's what we want to see, you guys breaking the game.
Cool. Okay. So moving on, Mardrux, I hope I got that approximately right, wants to know if we can give some details about crafting. Is that something in process or the microphone, please?
Is not in process, but I can talk more about what we want to do about crafting. So the good news is that we want to have a crafting system that gives the players a lot of agency. So basically, we want the crafting to feel like crafting. There is a process where you start with an item, you gradually improve it. During the improvement process, you make a lot of choices, you consume some resources, you have to go out in the world in dungeons to find those resources. But at the end of that process, you should be able to craft something amazing in terms of item power. And it's very important that that process feels like an actual crafting process. We don't want a simple an afterthought when it comes about crafting. You just bring the ingredients and there's your item. Because it just feels like a random generator. It just generates you an item.
It's just like an extra step,
Yeah.
tedious extra step.
So we'll have to experiment a bit with it. We didn't start on it yet. And depending on how we progress during the next 3 months, we might postpone it after the early access. So we'll implement it after the initial release as a major feature update.
Okay, so it's fair to say that we'll talk more about crafting.
And it's very important.
After
like to
early access.
Delve more into this, to use an AI word, delve more into this about crafting. Crafting is very important for the economy of the game. So basically, when we think about the economy of the game, we need to keep crafting in mind. So the crafting system in the end will dictate the whole economy of the game, especially if at some point we want to introduce trading between players or an auction house. So the economy of the game has to be fairly balanced. There shouldn't be any exploits when it comes with economy. That we shouldn't have inflation and so on. So that's why we want to take more time to design a good crafting system and one that fits our economy.
Yeah. And luckily we have some historical events to also look at to get that crafting system and economy right. Okay, so next up, the same person. What's the plan for NPC interaction? I'm guessing the person is talking about how we're going to talk with villagers or quest givers and so on.
Yeah. So when it comes about NPC villagers and so on, what we want to have at least two things. So an NPC should feel like they have a personality. Every NPC should have some sort of personality, and you will be able at some point to interact with them. They'll have dialogue lines, but in some NPCs will actually give you hints about, let's say, a treasure hidden inside the world or a hidden quest, and the NPCs, talking with an NPC will incentivize exploration in the world. They'll give you a kind of a hidden quest. And the second part we want to add to NPC, we want them to have some activities. So basically they have a personality, but they have in their village, they have a place in that village.
Closer to the microphone, please.
Yeah. So their behavior will be dictated by their personality and their role inside the village. So basically you have a blacksmith, you see the blacksmith going home at night, sleeping, coming back, trading with other NPCs for resources and so on. So there isn't a player interaction with that, but it's important for a settlement in our game to feel lively, to feel that NPCs there are not just animated statues that you cannot interact with.
Yeah, but again, I think we're talking about this feature in early access or post-early access.
Definitely we'll have dialogues and hidden quests in early access. And some behavior, we have something more ambitious in mind when it comes with the NPC behavior, but we'll have something so a village feels lively, feels populated, is not just empty space. And we want, as an example, we want to have an NPC, especially now that we have the day-night cycle. When in the evening, you'll see an NPC that leaves the village and goes on the road and starts lighting torches along the road. So you have properly lit road during the night.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Okay, next up. Again, we have a lot of questions to go through today. Okay, so getting back to the design question regarding classes, Caducus Ater asks, how do we plan to limit or not limit players from using the secondary classes skill? And yeah, that's the question that it was a good follow-up for the points in dual classing. And are there going to be exclusive skills for classes?
Confuse the questions in a way. Yeah, again, for the alpha, we won't limit the access to the class skills. Even if you take a hero archetype as a secondary class, you'll have access to all the talents and all the skills, because we want to experiment and see what fits together. However, in the release, we'll probably have to limit access to some talents or some abilities for a class. So because we want, it's a choice. It should matter if you pick warrior as a primary archetype or as a secondary archetype. Maybe if you pick warrior as secondary archetype, you don't have certain access to certain talents that make you a better tank or a better melee DPS. Same with cleric. Maybe you're not the best healer in the group if you pick cleric as a secondary archetype instead of picking the cleric as a primary archetype. So in the final version, access to some talents or some skills will be limited based on whether the archetype is primary or secondary.
Will that also, building a bit on the question, will that also affect the weapons that you can equip? Like if you're the warrior is your main class, will you be able to equip the staff, or is it just
you'll be able? We won't
sword?
limit the weapons. We had the thoughts about limiting the access to armor class. Let's say if warrior is not your primary archetype, you won't be able to equip plate armor. But I don't think it's that fun, because one of the advantages of having warrior even as a second archetype is that you're more tough. You have plate armor, and that's and it's not. It's nice to have access to more equipment in the end. Especially don't want to limit the weapons, because most abilities will require certain weapons to be equipped to cast them. And actually, we don't have that for the alpha. Right now, you can use melee abilities with staves and so on. But what we have in plan is that your hero, once you pick a secondary archetype, your hero will gain 2 extra slots for items. And the items will be automatically equipped depending on what ability you are going to use. So let's say primarily you play with a sword and a shield, but you also have, let's say, chain lightning equipped on your quick bar, and you have also a stave equipped as a weapon. Once you cast a mage ability, the game will automatically switch to your stave. You'll take your stave in your hands and cast that ability using the stave, because probably the stave will have more intellect, more willpower, and so on.
Oh, okay. So the game will do the math for you and do it automatically. Okay, so that's nice to know about the weapons and the classes.
Unfortunately, we won't have that for the alpha. We didn't have the time to implement that, and it's not an easy feature.
All right.
When it comes about usability and so on.
Good. So a question about dungeons. We already announced, and we already have in the build random dungeons. Will the loot be different if we finish the game alone or in a group?
No, and that's one of that we want to keep it that way. You get access to the same loot if you're playing solo or if you are playing in a party. The main difference between playing in a party is that you will be able to clear the dungeon faster. So internally we play a lot multiplayer, and it's very fun because you annihilate monsters way faster, you progress faster through the dungeon, and you get to the boss faster, and the boss is easier, especially that you have a healer in the party. But the loot is the same. You get the same items and the same, given the challenge level of the dungeon. You might be able in a party to progress further, and you'll get a slightly increase in quality of the items that dropped.
So now in the game, there's no difficulty scaling regarding the members of the party, the number of members in the party.
We have the same difficulties scaling that we have in the open world. So monsters do gain if a monster is in combat with multiple players, they get an HP bonus. They get more life. They get something like 50% more life. So if 3 players are fighting a monster, that monsters will have double life.
The HP.
Yeah, double the HP. And the scaling is done to incentivize a bit, to make it easier if you are in a party and they don't get an increase in damage, because that would be problematic. We don't want monsters to just one-shot you.
Yeah.
Just because you are.
They target the cleric and the.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the only difference will be in you'll be able to progress further in a difficulty level, and due to that, you'll get a slightly increased in loot quality.
So it's basically a trade-off. But you kind of get the
challenge
same
level
loot.
7, chance for the boss to drop an epic item, it's 70%. At level 12, it's 75% or something like that.
Okay, so it kind of balances out at the end. Yeah. So, okay, we got our answer for that. Good. Solarin would like to know if, since we mentioned the possibility of having role-based party setups in addition to more general builds for soloing or small groups, will it be possible for the players to save multiple specs to a character? That's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a huge quality of life improvement. It's a feature that it's a great quality of life feature to be able to switch between equipment and talent points and abilities equipped. And definitely we want to have that, and we'll implement something along that way. The only issue will be if there is a cost associated with respecting your talent points. Right now there isn't, but we want to give some weight to your decisions about what talent points you are allocating in your talent tree. And if it's free to respec, we don't want to get to a point where during a dungeon run in the middle you say, okay guys, just wait a bit, I'll become a healer now. I'll just change a few talents and now I'm a healer, or now I'm a tank. So to give way to your choices, there must be some kind of a cost associated with changing your talent tree. Maybe there isn't a currency cost. Maybe you just need to be in town, and if we implement it that way, you are in town, and in town you go to your stash and you just switch your setup, and it automatically switches your talent points, your equipment, and your abilities.
Okay, so it has to develop. The idea has to develop, but the plan is to have this quality of life.
Even if we introduce some currency cost associated with switching talent trees, then it can be integrated into the feature that automatically switches it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. We discussed the tough questions. Let's say we only have some rapid fire questions to end the Q&A, and don't hold you guys for like 30 minutes. Shintara wants to know, as far as moving is concerned, will we have tap and hold or click to hold to move continuously? I think already we have click and hold for PC, but
we have click and hold for PC. I think Shintara is referring to the control scheme where you, on a mobile device, you tap on the screen and your hero moves to the positions you tapped on. And also, and that control scheme we want to support at some point. You'll be able to pick between virtual joysticks or a tap to move, draw a gesture to cast an ability or attack.
Oh, so that is coming back from Eternium.
Yeah. And it's definitely a control scheme, especially on tablets, because it might be not ergonomic to hold a tablet with virtual thumbsticks. Tablet is heavier, and you might get tired after a bit.
Okay.
So that's a control scheme that's very fit for tablet, and even when you play more laid back, it's really nice. And that was one of the distinctive Eternium features.
Yeah, I think it's cool that people can choose.
They're
not locked into
we had a request in Eternium that we introduce the virtual thumbsticks, and we started with that in Astera because we want at some point to release the game on Switch and other consoles, Steam Deck and so on, and we want to support proper gamepad controls. we already support it for PC. In most areas, not everywhere, but when it comes to gameplay, it's supported. And that's why we started with this control scheme.
Okay. So it's not a rapid fire question after all, but yeah, we can. I think we can talk about every question like 20 minutes. So, musical wheelchairs asks, will the whirlwind ability for Mage and Artemis be similar, Astera, be similar to that of the warrior from Eternium in the Finalast project?
Yeah. So the difference now, what we did in Eternium, we initially Whirlwind is like it is right now in Astera. So basically you would cast Whirlwind, it will last for 6 seconds, and you weren't able to use any other abilities while Whirlwind was in progress. But we changed that, so you just cast Whirlwind, and Whirlwind is an effect around you, and then you are free to cast other abilities. And it feels more dynamic, and we might maybe introduce a talent that transforms it into that kind of ability, or have a piece of equipment that changes that way, or maybe after we experiment a bit, we switch it that way. There is another difference right now, because right now having virtual thumbsticks, we have this control scheme where you can hold the button and you channel an ability. So you manage your whirlwind, you can use it for 3 seconds, it consumes some energy, or you can use it for 7 seconds and move around with it. It gives you a bit more control, but is not yet the final version. We need to experiment with what feels the most fun.
Shooting lightning bolts with whirlwind sounds fun.
Yeah, especially with Glacial Tempest. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and for the final question,
I have something to add
to the
when
whirlwind.
it comes to the whirlwind. Yeah. Talk about abilities. Yeah, we have something. So we have something that's similar with Whirlwind in Ethereum right now. It's called Glacial Tempest for the Mage. So basically, it's like an aura around you. You activate it, it consumes some energy per second, and it damages the monsters, and it has a chance to chill them.
They actually become ice blocks, which is really fun. Yeah.
So it's easy for us to switch Whirlwind, but we need to have a distinctions between the two abilities. They shouldn't be just 2 hours. You activate them. Sure, they drain a lot of energy, but you deal a lot of AoE damage. And in a way, feels a bit more fun if you just hold the button and channel it a bit. But that will be a challenge once we implement the draw to cast control scheme. We need to...
Yeah. Okay. So the last question is from Mardrix, and it is about the marketplace town interface. I'm guessing we were talking about again the NPCs and the merchants.
Yeah, so right now, and actually in Ethereum, we had initially in Ethereum, all the features of the game were accessible from the same menu, from the main menu of the game. From inventory, you could access any feature of the game. But at some point, by adding features to the game, we got to the point where we didn't have enough physical space to add more buttons for every feature. And it felt a bit, we wanted to have a town where you see NPCs, you see a blacksmith, you see a quest giver, and so on. So we spread those features around the NPCs, organized in a circle in the town square. And we have the same thing in Astera, but the cities are larger in Astera. And we have, so basically the features in the game, the shops, the crafting, when we have the crafting, will be spread out on NPCs.
They're not dependent to the menu. They're spread out in
there is we need to be careful not to put them too far apart. So if you want to go to the shop, then you want to go to the blacksmith, the players shouldn't have to walk 20 seconds between each NPC. So they should be kind of centralized. It's breaking the suspension of disbelief of the game in a way, but it's better for the life quality of the player.
Yeah, having your
to
chest
have them
like 30 seconds away from the merchant.
Easily accessible, But that's easy to implement. We need to test it, and there is a sweet spot where they are placed exactly right, and it's not tedious to go between NPCs. Although It's never an easy question. In my playthrough, so I start a new character, I run some dungeons, and I want to equip a character. And at some point after I finish a dungeon run, I go back to the city and I go to the vendors and see if they have some interesting equipment, powerful equipment I would like. And right now we have, in the first chapter, we have 3 hubs, and each vendor has a different loot table. They refresh every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes. And I do feel it's nice in a way because it's relaxing. I can read something or watch a movie, and then I go browse the NPC. Maybe I find something interesting. I like it that way, but it's also a bit tedious. I don't know. I would like to hear your opinions about this feature, because I've seen a lot of you using it during the alpha and running the 3 merchant hubs and checking the stores.
Yeah. I mean, we can also open the thread on Discord for when running the alpha. Yeah, it's a good question. When I played, I didn't find it tedious in a way. It's natural.
It depends on
Yeah, I think it depends on the play
how
style,
much you use it.
How much you use it, yeah.
And that's I didn't get bored by it. I was using it, and it was in a way relaxing, but in a way tedious. So that's why I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I think we need more of the people's input with this question.
Especially since we'll have more areas and more merchants and so on, and we don't want to get to the point that there are 50 merchants on the world.
You fast travel
between them, and they refresh at some point. So
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. We will see. You guys have to tell us when we're running the alpha about that. Okay, so those were all the questions. We talked a lot. I hope you found it useful. And next up, the alpha, the middle of the May.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay. All right, guys. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next alpha.
Thank you. Take care.